All right. Well, we are off and running. Branch, welcome to the podcast, to the Passion Project. I'm so stoked to have you here. It's so funny. We're just talking offline. Like, how do you pronounce your last name? How do I pronounce my last name? We both have German derivative names. Branch, Lotspeich.
Correct.
Okay, I got it right once. I'm not going to do it again. So,
I'll go with that.
Give me a little high five over here.
Absolutely.
Super grateful for you coming down and taking time. You're a busy man, which we'll talk a lot about. But we've talked a fair number of times, or a handful of times over the years.
Yeah.
And because I would say I'm enthralled with what you do, because what you do is so good for the world and for the community. And we'll talk a lot about it. But where are we? It may not look like it, but we are in a studio here on the Garden Isle, your home on Kauai, one of the most beautiful places on earth. And again, we always giggle with Olivia here, who's working behind the scenes, like, we could be anywhere in the world in this studio. We could be anywhere. But we are on one of the most beautiful places on the planet with some of the most beautiful ocean conditions. And it's a waterman world over here, a water person world, world-class surf and paddling and everything else. And it's a huge driver of tourism here. There's all this beauty and all these good things. And there's also a darker side as a result of the ocean, because it is so alive here and it is so powerful and enticing. It makes it dangerous. And we're not a tourism company here, so we can talk factual. And it's, again, I would never deter anybody from coming. That's why we're here. We spend a lot of time over here. We're very blessed to do so. But you have to know what you're doing. You have to be, it's not that you have to know what you're doing. You have to be safe and smart when you're in the water here. And when you get off the airplane in Kauai, you'll see Kalani Vieira's talk on the big screen in the baggage claim, because you have to be on your game here and you have to be smart, like anywhere, right? Any tourism, you just got to be smart. But it's not just tourists that have to be smart and safe, it's the locals. And we will talk a lot about the statistics of water safety and what got you into it and why you're so passionate about it with your foundation, the Rescue Tube Foundation. We can see the rescue tube over your left shoulder. That tube has rescued a lot of people. Maybe not that one in particular, but that saves a lot of lives.
It does.
God bless what you and your foundation have done to do that. And we're going to talk. That's why we're here. I'm so excited to talk about it. So thank you for coming down, and thank you for all you do. So pretty
Mark,
neat.
thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be here and to share this very important, life-saving story and concept of placing public rescue tubes out on beaches.
Yeah, a lot of them, and a lot of accolades and recognition. I'm really excited about the story, because if you spend any time on Kauai, or really even the majority of the Hawaiian Islands, and now through California and other places we'll talk about, you may find this on a tree, on a lifeguard tower, in a number of areas, in all the nooks and crannies on beaches. And you may walk past it 100 times, but that 101st time that you need it, it's there for a reason.
Right.
And it's really a great story. And like the majority of conversations I have on the podcast, it's, how did this come to pass? How did this foundation start? How did that concept start? But also, how did you become this person that we're now talking about it? And that's, we talked over coffee this morning. There's a lot of stuff I look forward to learning, because there's a lot, even we sat in here and you're like, oh, Mark, I'm usually on that side of the microphone. So even from your career and everything that's led you to running this great foundation, I'm super intrigued to find out about it. So I always say this is kind of like, this is your life, Branch, but it's also, this is the life of the Rescue Tube Foundation and all the good doing through it. So that's what we'll talk about today. So
I look forward to it.
But some of the fun stuff. So we talked about our names, our German names, and you had shared that two of your best friends growing up in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Cincinnati, right.
Okay, so you were like the German kids. Here we are in Kauai. You've been doing this for a long time. Let's talk the backstory. Like, what brought you, well, before we even get to that, growing up in, my mom grew up in Ohio. It's a very different environment. It's flat, it's cold, and my mom was like, when she got out, she's like, I don't ever need to go back. I don't know if you feel that way. But let's talk about, one, you've got your Hawaiian shirt on, Rain Spooner, very representative of the islands.
Yep.
It's really interesting that you're here doing all this good, but you started somewhere very different. So let's talk a little bit about the Wayback Machine. Can we share where you, because I'm always intrigued on how someone gets from Cincinnati, Ohio to running a foundation, water safety foundation on Kauai. Just amazing. So talk a little bit backstory.
Well, born and raised in Cincinnati, a real Cincinnati boy. grew up going to local elementary school and then on to the college preparatory high school, Walnut Hills High School, which is where I had my friends that you alluded to before. And then ended up going to the University of Cincinnati as well. And
what was your focus at school?
My father was a neurosurgeon. And so I always thought I'd go into neurosurgery or go into medicine and surgery in particular. Probably it wasn't something we discussed. It wasn't a mandate from the parents. It was just something I kind of assumed until I realized that, quite honestly, school was not my natural habitat. I think I became more of a critic of my education than a participant, and so my grades were, I got by, but not great. I sort of snuck into this college preparatory school. And someplace along the line, I don't remember when, sophomore, junior year, maybe I went to my father and I said, you do realize I'm not going to medical school. That is not in the cards. Went on to the University of Cincinnati as a pre-med student because I wanted to take the science. I was very interested in all of that. And boy, that's a long story that I don't know that we have time for, but I actually left the university in 1969 when the student riots were happening around the country. And
like Vietnam related?
Vietnam in opposition to, but college campuses, they were literally, Berkeley burned a couple of buildings down in 69. The students were against the war, but they also felt that they had no word, no power within their own university settings. They were the customers, right? Their parents were paying good money, and yet they had no say in their curriculum or how they were being taught or how they were being graded. And so there were several student organizations. The better known ones, SDS and the Black Panthers, were extreme. And so there was an organization that had gotten started, the Association of Student Governments, and it ended up having its new president in '69 coming from the University of Cincinnati. And so I had worked with him before, and just making a very short story out of it, we moved the organization to Washington, D.C. I was sort of vice president for research of the Association of Student Governments. And we were the moderate students. We were the ones that saying that we just need to talk more with university administrations. We need to understand both sides of the story. And so I dropped out of school at that point. I was approaching my senior year, or in my senior year, I guess, and spent a year and a half in Washington through the Nixon era at that point.
Interesting time in the world.
Very interesting time. All kinds of side stories.
Yes,
but
I
that's
can
not
only.
what we're here for.
Well,
So-
69 was Summer of
yeah,
Love.
right,
We
yeah,
won't
right.
ask details on that one.
We'll do another podcast someday. Came back to the university and re-entered school and ended up leaving and moving to Germany. I had an opportunity with a German medical film producer.
German medical film
Or
producer.
a medical film producer who was German. He worked in Munich, Germany.
But what are medical film? What is that? A medical film?
Medical photography. So I'm a medical photographer. That is my primary occupation throughout my life.
So if you were to research branch like I did, you would not know this. We talked about that. I'm truly learning this as everybody else is as well. You're a medical photographer.
Never hit the internet, no. A medical photographer, I always like to say, is exactly what you probably think it is, which is to say that I self-trained, but took photographs of anything medicine, from dermatology to open heart surgery. Wow. It was something that I started by working in high school at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center's Department of Ophthalmology, and it was a summer job, became a photographer there. Moved on to the laser laboratory, medical laser laboratory at the Children's Hospital, also associated with the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, and worked under Dr. Leon Goldman, who, if you Google him, you'll find was the father of laser medicine. Started the whole concept of using lasers in medicine, and I was a photographer in the laser lab for several years, also a technician there. The best known laser technique right now, perhaps in the general community, is tattoo removal with lasers. We literally developed that.
Wow.
And there's another podcast that's talking about.
We'll have 18 versions
right.
of episodes.
Fascinating how we got involved with removing tattoos with lasers. But I met a medical film producer who came to learn about the laser medical work that we were doing. And it ended up being an offer to join his company in Munich, Germany. And so in the early 70s, I moved to Munich, Germany, and worked for 3 years with Forschungs- und Dokumentarfilm. It's a research and documentary film is the literal translation of the company. And they did films mostly for pharmaceutical companies around the various aspects of medicine that were new and innovative that were being taught. So the pharmaceutical company would make these films and give them to doctors, as a freebie, as a way of creating relationship with doctors. But they financed our company and our work, and I worked with them for about 3 years.
Let me ask you, it's super interesting. I mean, again, I didn't know, and there's more to your career that I don't know based on what you were alluding to earlier. I've heard you speak little bits of German a couple times. Do you still speak the language?
I always smile and say, ich habe meine Deutsche vergessen. Es tut mir leid, aber es geht nicht länger. I've forgotten a lot of my German. I lived there for 3 years. I spoke it very poorly, but fluently.
But if you went and immersed yourself today, you would pick, I mean, you're functional for sure.
My wife's family is from Switzerland, and we've gone back frequently, and part of the German part, Zurich, the German part of Switzerland. And you're quite right. I'm sort of fascinated when I go into a restaurant and all of a sudden I can order food and understand what's going on. But if you wanted to have a nice political conversation in German with me right now, I would fail pathetically.
Got it. All right. For now, but I'm sure, again, some immersion would go a long way. Interesting. You had told me earlier offline that you got very into genealogy in your family. It sounds like one of your great-great-great-grandfathers, something came over in like the 1700s to the U.S. from Germany. When you went back, are you able to go back and see where your family is from or anything like that?
I didn't know much about it when I actually moved there in the 70s. But I did look around for other Lotspeichs, Lotspeiches.
Don't expect me to say it just correctly like that.
And really couldn't find any. And very ironically, the week I was leaving, after living there for 3 years, I ran across one and spoke with him briefly, and he had no idea that he had American cousins. There are lots of Lotspeiches in the United States. I mean, lots, but it's uncommon, but we're all around the country.
Interesting. So that's fun.
Yeah.
The history of our families is, the genealogy is all we were talking is very intriguing, very interesting, and
really is.
Sometimes surprising. So you're in Germany for 3 years, and did you enjoy that work? It sounds like for somebody that didn't want to follow in Dad's footsteps after all and didn't love school, you self-taught how to, photography, then you get this career going this path.
It was my way of staying, quite honestly, staying close to my father. I knew I wasn't going to be a doctor, let alone a surgeon, but I loved medicine and I loved photography. It was also one of his hobbies. And so I just sort of put the two together and created a career path for myself at a time when you needed to be self-trained. There were very, very limited college courses in medical photography. Kodak started one in Rochester, but that was about it.
You had mentioned to me earlier that one of the other things that people don't know a lot about you is that you have not just Germany, but a pretty extensive international background. Did this same career take you to a lot, or did you pivot?
It was the medical photography that sort of helped facilitate this. Apparently, I had a travel lust that I wasn't really aware of, but it was really fun and very rewarding in my life. After 3 years in Germany, I loved Germany, but it was a difficult place at the same time. Plus, I was sort of antsy to try other things. And so I ended up traveling up to Sweden and interviewed at a few places and found a position with the Swedish government in a town called Linköping, which is about 3 hours inland from Stockholm. And I was hired, consultant, a learning media consultant is what my official title was for the Swedish government, working at a teaching hospital. And I worked there in film, 60 millimeter film, and we also had a TV studio. So that was really the beginning of my getting into videography and its use in medicine. Up till then, it had been still photography or 60 millimeter film. And I was in Sweden for 3 years as well, coincidentally working. There we traveled a lot around Sweden to various medical centers and did recordings. And this was more specifically for teaching doctors and nurses and paramedical people as well, various techniques that the Swedish government felt, they needed support material, learning materials, as my title shows. And we had also a still photography division there as well.
Got it. So you do 3 years in Germany, 3 years in Sweden. While you're in this stage of your life, that's the work side. What were you doing for fun? We not only maybe overseas, but I mean, what we never talked about is like, were you into sports, or was there any other hobbies outside of photography, et cetera? Like, what were you into at that time? Because again, here we are on Kauai, like we'll get to that. But what were you into at that time?
Quite honestly, I was very into my job and I have not been particularly active in sports throughout my life. I enjoy not so much the participation as watching. Saw my first cricket game when I was living over in
Where did you see that?
In London.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. So your hobby was the photography and
it really
the
was.
career.
Yeah.
Got it.
But I enjoyed that travel lust that I mentioned. I enjoyed taking in the environments that I was living in, and I'm not a linguist. I have a difficult time studying language, but I seem to pick them up relatively well. So it was fun for me to just be out and, to be on a city bus in Sweden, hearing two Swedes talking about, that American over there, and some negative comments. And then as I am leaving the bus looking in very understandable, if not far from perfect Swedish, saying, well, it's very interesting hearing your conversation. Have a nice day. And then walk off.
I love that. It's so great. I always wish I had that. Whenever I've been truly, clearly been the butt of some joke somewhere internationally, I wish I could do that. Right. I'm just the butt. I don't have any retort. Okay. So you've got 3 and 3 at that time. How old are you when you're in Germany and then you're in Sweden? How old are you at that time? Are you in mid-20s?
I'm in my mid-20s to early 30s.
Early 30s.
6 years.
And then you kept on going internationally. Where'd you go from there?
Well, I returned to Cincinnati. My father became ill, and I felt a real tug and need to be back in Cincinnati. And I had worked, as I mentioned, at the medical center there earlier, so I came back. And it just so happened that as I was coming back in, 1979, I guess, the Department of Biomedical Communications at the medical center at the University of Cincinnati was looking for a new director. And Biomedical Communications was, in fact, their photography department. It was the same department I had worked in earlier, but it was photography and not so much film anymore, but videography, medical illustration, medical computing. So I interviewed for that job, and I was able successfully to get that job. So I became the director of the Department of Biomedical Communications and worked there for about 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. So till you're close to 40?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Sorry, go on.
Well, I was just saying, most of that time I was in Cincinnati, not traveling so much. But some opportunities came up through an organization called the Project Hope. Project Hope out of San Francisco had this concept that they started after the Korean War. They actually outfitted a ship, and took it to third world countries with doctors and nurses on board, and they were a teaching ship, a medical teaching ship. And they had turned into more of a land-based organization. So I was hired by event, if you will, not full-time at all, but just occasionally. Well, it wasn't so much hired. I volunteered to work with Project Hope. So the first job I did for them was to go to China and help establish a medical teaching center at a Chinese teaching hospital. And that took me to China for 3-4 months a year over about 3 years, linear. And we built a television studio and a medical illustration facility and a medical media department and a photography department. And
was that exciting for you? Like, did you enjoy that?
Oh,
that goes back to
yeah.
that wanderlust,
Yeah.
like go
No,
travel, and then so you get to balance that love for travel and culture with your career, which is
Exactly.
also your hobby,
Right.
to some degree, right?
Correct. So it was amazing because in this case I was in an environment that I knew zero about China. I certainly didn't know the language. I tried desperately to learn to speak the language, failed miserably.
That's a tough one.
It's a very tough language to learn. But as far as what I was doing and the contribution I was making in what is not a third world country, but at the time in the late 80s, early 90s when I went there, China had a long way to go with their understanding of Western medicine. But they were blending traditional Chinese medicine with Western medicine in a manner that I thought was just remarkable. So I really valued the time. So I would go over for a couple, like I said, 3-4 months a year, and then come back to the medical center. They gave me a leave of absence, which was very nice. And that worked out really well. And then Project Hope sent me to Poland, and I did a similar thing in Poland and Krakow.
Wow.
For a couple of years, and done some volunteer work in Japan.
Does the wanderlust, the travel lust, does that continue with you?
Yes and no. One, I'm very, very happily married now, and so I have a home life with Melody, who I've been married to for 25 years, and she has 2 beautiful sons that are my sons now, and so I didn't have that family life to,
You had no reason to stick around back
right,
then.
exactly. It was
Got
easy
it.
to just pick up
Yeah.
and say, I'll be back, and not so much now. But Melody likes to travel, and as I mentioned earlier, she has direct family. Her mother who's now left us, but her mother was born in Lucerne, Switzerland, and Melody has family in Switzerland, so we've spent some time over there.
It's a good, that's not a bad gig. Split your time, maybe not split, but you're bouncing back and forth between Kauai and Switzerland. I mean, 2 spectacularly beautiful areas, completely different and wonderful.
Completely different, yeah, exactly.
That's
And we haven't, we've been there several times. We don't go and stay or live there. We're basically here,
Gotcha.
so.
So where in the story does Kauai come into the picture?
In 2006, Melody and I were working in Cincinnati. By this time, my professional life had, how they can
Pivot?
take strange pivots, and so mine had pivoted a couple of times. But I was working with several different companies. I got involved in the internet, and then I was working with I have a technical background as well, so that I had started someplace along this linear progression that I'm describing. I had started building command centers with a company, computer command centers, and that led me to working with a company that we got involved with, like the Department of Defense, and but also with Procter and Gamble, and with I'm just trying to think of some of the clients. Anyway,
But big hitters.
We would, large hitters, and we would build the command center, not the computing part of it, but where
So
people
not the
would sit
Dana
and-
Center, but
not the data
like
center.
the home office or the main office
Correct, exactly.
complex. Okay.
And that was a lot of travel that would push me around, and that worked out very nicely.
I don't think there's any command centers or data centers on Kauai though.
Well, the 911 center, I would put into that category. It's the kind of thing we would have built.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the Melody's mother became ill, a little bit of dementia, mobility issues, and basically her doctors said that she would be well served by living in a calmer, easier going place. She was in Newport Beach.
Oh.
And
Are we saying that that's
yes,
not
right.
not a calm place?
Very, very uncalm, very beautiful. But we were in Laguna Niguel, all Southern California. So in 2006, Melody and her mother and I managed to move over to Kauai. And
So her mother, originally from Switzerland,
right,
was now living in California
correct.
with you guys, and you guys all migrated. Why did you end up in California in the first place? Because of your
Melody and her mother. Melody was born and raised in California.
Oh, I
That's where her
missed
mother
that.
had been
Okay.
for a long, long time.
missed that. Okay.
I got a job there, building these command centers and some other things. And her mother was not living with us, but we were a close-knit, the three of us. And Melody has been taking care of her mother for quite a while, even though just as a daughter would. And her mother lived by herself and was doing okay. But as I said, the doctors thought that she'd be well served in a more serene environment. Her mother had always loved Hawaii. Melody and I actually had as well. We were married here on Kauai in the Christ Memorial Church, a little stone church up in Kilauea on the North Shore. And so the idea of coming back here had always been in the back of our minds as maybe a place someday to retire to. But then when we had this interesting opportunity to bring her mother with us and perhaps move over here a few years earlier than we might have otherwise. I was a telecommuter back to my work. And so in 2006, we came here and we took care of her mother for about 12 years during that time until she passed on. And I became involved in Rotary as something to do that was very rewarding. The thing we haven't mentioned is that years ago in my childhood, I was a lifeguard.
Oh,
So
see, we were going to loop that
there's
back.
the initial tie-in.
Gotcha.
I got my WSI, my water safety instructor, when I was 15, which is the first year you could get that from the Red Cross.
And this is in Cincinnati. So is this for pools, rivers, lakes? What was it for?
It was in Cincinnati. I had been going to some summer camps as a child, and there was always a waterfront director, and there were always some lifeguards, and I thought that was pretty cool. And my father had a background in his younger days of being a lifeguard and was a good swimmer, and we'd always belonged to a swim club in Cincinnati, and I swam on the swim team. I guess I said I wasn't much involved in
I
sports.
thought I asked that question, but apparently I didn't ask it
Exactly,
right.
Well, I was so bad as a swimmer on the swim team that maybe I just sort of...
Yeah, you know what? You and me alike. I'm right there with you.
I was good in a medley because I was just one of four, but
I get it.
solo
More than
events
you know, I get it.
did not work. But no, swimming has been very important to me in my life. And so I ended up becoming the head lifeguard at a couple of YMCA camps, one in Michigan and one down in Alabama. And so I had this lifeguard background to me.
Got it. The glue of the story just came out.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
So you're here.
Yep.
So, by the way, you got married at the Little Stone Church right when you come into Kilauea, which is probably in more postcards and photographs between that one and the one in Honolulu. They're just these stunning small little churches that probably go back
really
over
are.
100 years now at this point. It's spectacular. Oh, that's so cool.
beautiful.
Okay. So now we're getting to the modern part of the story. But before we do, you're living here. You've now been here for almost 20 years. Were you continuing to work and telecommute and go back and forth, or were you able to continue that work while you're here? Like, what did you continue?
I continued just for just about 2 years. And then as a telecommuter, it became obvious that really wasn't the best way to do what I was doing for this company. So I basically went into retirement at that point in time.
Not much of a retirement branch.
Well, 2000,
which everybody will learn in a moment.
Right. We came over in 2006. I worked until late 2007, I guess, as a telecommuter, and then retired. In 2008 is when this story starts.
Begins.
Right, exactly.
All right. Let's talk about Branch's life. It's probably not 2.0, but call it the current, because you haven't stopped, right? So in 2008, you become part of the Honolulu Rotary Club.
Right.
Take it from there.
Rotary Club of Honolulu Bay. I joined them in 2007, actually. And interesting in that a neighbor of ours that we had gotten to know a little bit actually asked my wife, Melody, if she'd be interested in joining Rotary. And she was very intrigued, very honored by the offer, but we both were, but she was taking care of her mother. That was her primary role, and so she declined. And so then they turned to me and said, well, how about you?
Were you familiar with what Rotary clubs do or did?
I actually was, because my grandfather, my father's father, was a Rotarian.
There's a lot of continuity in your life,
Yeah.
although it didn't maybe seem like it, as we connect the dots, right? Interesting. To humor me and everybody, the audience, can you give a little high level on what Rotary clubs? I think many people, most of us, have heard of it, but don't really know what they provide.
Rotary was started in 2005 by a gentleman in Chicago who, at that time,
I'm sorry, what year?
2000.
1905?
1905.
Okay,
thank you. Right. Okay. Yes, good old 1905. By a gentleman in Chicago who felt that it would be very useful, very beneficial, one of the important words in Rotary, to bring working people together, specifically people who ran industry together, and vocationally to share what they were doing, their insights, how to run companies, and if at all possible, to share financially, to buy things from one another and to outsource through each other. So it started, they called it vocational, but it started very much as a good old boys club in the true sense of it, to promote business. And as it grew, they began to realize that they were interested in doing some nice things for their local communities. So they started some community activities of various sorts. I think initially probably donating money, because these are relatively wealthy gentlemen who started the organization. It quickly spread into other cities, but it was a men's-only organization until the early 70s was the first time that women were invited to come in. Rotary has now grown to over 33,000, well, 1.1 million Rotarians around the world. It's in, I don't know the number, but in a huge number of countries. And we are predominantly now an organization that is into the area of community service. So Rotary clubs look to their local communities to see what they can do to help school programs, to help food dependency programs, the local food banks. We also have developed, because we're an international organization, a huge amount of international projects. We looked mostly to the most needy third world countries in basic areas like clean water, or we fight polio as an international disease. Polio has been wiped out in the United States for years, but had been running rampant worldwide. And so the Rotary International, as it's officially known, joined with the Gates Foundation and the World Health Organization to help put an end to Rotary, to put an end to polio, and have come very, very close. Polio, in the wild form of polio, is only in existence in Afghanistan at this point in time. And so
and Rotary was a big part of that equation?
Huge part of that
Amazing.
equation.
Amazing.
A lot of boots on the ground. A lot of Rotarians have volunteered around the world to go into rural areas, villages, et cetera, and administer the polio vaccine that is used, the Savin vaccine.
It's amazing. And what was the allure for you to join it here on Kauai back in 2007. I know they asked.
I was, yeah, right, exactly. I think very much so to become more involved in my own local community. Melody and I knew and loved Kauai and what it has to offer, and we'd gotten to know some of our neighbors and some people through church, but not much beyond that. And so this gave me an opportunity to join a group of people who were very involved in the local community, and I became the community services chair, as we call it. We have a little board of directors and chair people for various departments. And so that allowed me to start organizing some activities that, included helping schools doing projects. The two largest projects we've done on Kauai during the time that I was involved was the Hanalei Pier, which I'm sure you're very familiar with.
Very, very. I think most people are, whether from visiting, jumping off it, or just seeing it in postcards.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's become very iconic for Hawaii, but Kauai in particular.
For sure.
The canopy, the little structure at the end of the pier, was in very, very bad disrepair. And the pier is owned and operated by the state. The state really didn't have the resources to do anything with it. And so through Rotary, we developed a desire. We are the Rotary Club of Hanalei Bay. That is our official name. And we thought it was very appropriate that we do something to try to help stabilize this structure at the end of the Hanalei Pier. And I chaired the committee that worked with the state. To do that, we raised funds. By the time we finally got enough funds together, the structure was in such bad condition that we just had to take it down and rebuild it. So that's something that
you should be proud of that one for sure. I mean, as well used of a facility as I can think of over here. I mean, that is, like you said, it is an iconic representation of the North Shore of Kauai.
It is. And there are 2 rescue tubes on it. So.
Well, that leads us to, so Rescue Tube came out of, not created by, so let's talk about the genesis of this Rescue Tube that, again, is over your shoulder. Why don't you tell the backstory of Rescue Tube and then how you got involved?
The background is fairly straightforward. There was a gentleman here on the island. His name is Jen Tyler, who in, I think, 2007, thereabouts, decided he was a person who still is, to the best of my knowledge, teaches water safety and swimming on the mainland, but here on Kauai as well. He had this incredibly wonderful idea of taking some just rescue tubes, the same rescue tube that any lifeguard pretty much in the world uses. It's just a foam rubber rescue tube. And putting them down on a very remote beach, Larson's Beach on the east shore of the island, and just hung them in a couple of bushes down there, just in case someone got into trouble. Jen understood the basic premise of lifeguarding, which is that no lifeguard will ever go into the water to perform a rescue without taking a flotation device, a personal flotation device with them to candidly protect themselves. The rescuer needs to be able to protect themselves if they're going into the water.
Can you explain for anybody that hasn't been, and I've been fortunate to go through the training, what that means? When you say protect themselves, what are they protecting themselves from?
If a water rescue situation, as simple as it may sound, I don't know, anyway, as simple as it may sound, is a very, very dangerous thing to do. The person who is in distress, not necessarily drowning, they're just out there, they're maybe just very tired because they have been swimming too long. More than likely, particularly on this island, but all around the world, they've been caught in a rip current. And a rip current is where, as the water comes to the shore, it will necessarily have to go back out, and it'll find the path of least resistance, which is typically a little trough in the sand, and the water will come together on the shore and go back out that trough, and that creates water movement away from shore, known as a rip current. If you happen to be swimming in that rip current, you'll find slowly that you're drifting away from the shore. You're not really aware of it. It's very slow. It's not an undertow. That people are more familiar maybe with undertows. Those are not so very common compared to rip currents. But you start to realize you're away from shore, and then you'll start to swim to get back to shore, and you'll start to get a little tired. And so now you're in distress, if you will. You're someone out there who needs some help ideally, or some knowledge. There's some training that needs to be done, and we're doing our best to do that. The Lifeguards and the Kauai Lifeguard Association. If then you're deciding to go out, whether you're a trained lifeguard or just a family member or Good Samaritan, if you just swim out by yourself and you're an Olympic level swimmer, that's fine. And you get out there and you say, I can help this person. I know how to turn them over and put my arm around them and keep their head up, and we're going to swim back to shore. You're going to get very tired very quickly. And the fact is, before you probably get them into the correct position, which only a lifeguard would know, they're probably going to see you at this point, when you approach them, as something that floats. And they're just going to grab you. They're going to glom onto you because you're floating and they're not, and they want to keep their head above water. They want to breathe. They're frightened. The adrenaline is pumping. If they do that and they get you in sort of an arm lock like that, a bear hug, you're both likely going to drown. And double drownings have been very, very common. Kauai was, I'm happy to say in past tense, known as the drowning capital of the country. There were more drownings on Kauai historically per capita. Now keep in mind we have a fairly small population, but nonetheless per capita, than any place in Hawaii, and there are more drownings in Hawaii than any place in the United States. And double drownings were one of the reasons that this was the case. So a lifeguard is trained immediately. If you're going to go out, often they'll take two forms of flotation. They'll take a life board and a rescue tube out with them, but minimally they'll take the rescue tube. And the idea that Jen had when he put rescue tubes on Larson's Beach was that he needed to have one if he was going to help somebody. He was is a very good swimmer. But he was going to leave them there because there were other people on that beach, and it's a very remote beach. Even if you dial 911, you're probably 20 minutes out from anybody showing up, and people drowned in 3 to 5 minutes. So that was way out of the scope of being able to depend on, first responders. One of those saves, the person was safe and very much alive, but needed to go to the hospital just to be evaluated, and went to the emergency room. And Dr. Monty Downs, who had been a long-time doctor on the island and had been in the Department of Emergency Medicine at Wilcox Hospital for years, heard the story that this guy had been rescued by someone who had a rescue tube that had gone out. And Dr. Downs became fascinated with how that happened and talked and got to the backstory, got in touch with Jen and understood what was happening. And Dr. Downs felt that this was such a good idea to put public access rescue tubes, flotation devices on the beaches. And he at the time was the president of the Kauai Lifeguard Association because he had always been very concerned about water safety. So he started through KLA putting rescue tubes out on the various beaches, but KLA would finance it. I think probably Dr. Downs out of his own pocket financed a lot of this. It was difficult to install a rescue tube. At the time, it took boots on the ground, people to help. And so, as so often the case, he became a speaker at our Rotary Club. Mm-hmm. And many of our speakers come to us to not just share their story, but to ask for financial support and in many cases for help. And when he came to us, many of us in the club immediately realized that this was an important new concept that he was asking our support for. We raised some funds very quickly and donated those. But equally importantly, I think there were 7 or 8 of us that said, when are you going to be installing the next rescue tubes? We want to help. And
Branch, you'd been on island at this time, less than 2 years, if I recall, right? So this is in
2008. So yeah.
And you had just been in the Rotary for a year or so.
Yep.
But with your lifeguard background, and now you've been on this island, were you aware of the statistics, the water safety, the drowning statistics on the island at the time? Do you recall?
The statistics, no, I was not aware. I was aware that we had rip currents because, quite honestly, I'd gotten caught in one right on one of the calmest beaches on island, which is Hanalei Bay. And it kind of frightened me that all of a sudden I realized I needed to. The thing I want to mention, and if people take nothing else from this conversation we're having, Mark, this is the most important thing, because if you swim in the ocean, you're going to get caught in a rip current. It's just a given at some point in time. They're very, very easy to get out of, but you just simply need to know how.
How do you do it?
Rip currents, as I said, are made by the water returning from having come up on a beach, and they're going back out into the ocean. They're typically only 20 or 30 feet wide. And then the water to the left or right of this current, because it is a current going away from the beach, the water to the left and right is either calm or it's waves breaking back to the shore. So if you're in a rip current and you find yourself being dragged away from shore, you should stop, float. Don't worry that you're going out a little further. It makes no difference. Just stop, float, get your composure, get a good breath, be sure that you're comfortable just being there, and then simply turn left or right and swim parallel to the shoreline, 20 feet, no distance at all. You'll realize as you're swimming that all of a sudden you're not being pulled out, because at this point you become sensitive to the pull when you've realized what's going on. 20 feet or less even, you'll be in calm water, or as I said, water that the waves will even help bring you back in. Then swim back into shore. It's that simple.
It's probably one of the most common lifeguard education tools for the public, right? I mean, that's what, if you're on a beach and you hear lifeguards, it's usually swim, stand up or swim over to the side, or, oftentimes lifeguards are doing what they call preventatives. They're going down, don't swim out here, go over there, there's not a rip.
Right.
But yeah, I think you said it, and it's very poignant. Like, if you swim in the ocean, you will at some point, you will be pulled in a rip. And that's eye-opening, I think, for a lot of people. And as we know in Hawaii, when you have as much tourism, people come from Cincinnati and everywhere else, it's a beautiful body of water. They just want to go swim. And they don't have, if you're a water person, you spend a lot of time in the ocean, you get a pretty good understanding pretty quickly. But for a lot of people, it's just a beautiful vacation and they're just going in the water.
That's it. You're on vacation. What can happen on vacation? Right.
Yeah, unfortunately, too much. Real quickly, can you talk about, we'll use Kauai as an example. You and I were talking offline earlier. We have about 110 miles of coastline on the island of Kauai.
Right.
How many lifeguard towers?
There are, as I understand, and I may have this off by a number or two, there are 9 lifeguarded beaches and 11 lifeguard towers.
Yeah, think about that, right? And then think of all the nooks and crannies. And where do people, especially in the social media age, where do people want to go?
They used to open up the tourist books. Now they go online.
Yeah.
And they read from various tourist organizations, oh, there's this secret beach that no one knows about, and it's so calm and so beautiful. So they very often try to go to the more remote beaches, the more exciting, adventurous places on island.
Which are unlifeguarded.
Absolutely.
Hard to access, and at different times of the year might have huge surf or big rip currents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Subsequently, again, 100 miles plus, all those little beautiful nooks and crannies, the heavy tourism. I mean, there's usually, I think, something like equitable number of tourists on island as there are residents, or some significant number there.
All right.
And you've got, I think we have like 70 lifeguards on the island of Kauai. So all I'm saying is that having this tool that was developed by this concept between Jen, Tyler, is that Jen? Yeah, I think Jen Tyler.
Jen Tyler.
And Dr.
Downs.
Now, well, so okay, I don't want to jump the shark, but it clearly was something that Jen saw an opportunity and a need. Dr. Downs saw the benefit from it, and it sparked this thing. He presents it to the Rotary, and what happens from there?
So we started working with Dr. Downs and the Kauai Lifeguard Association, installing rescue tubes on the island. One of the things that was kind of interesting that came up was, do we have permission to do this? And Dr. Downs would smile and say, well, sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. And then he said, no, that's not really what I mean. He said, I've talked to people in authority, I'll just leave it at that, on the island. And there's concerns about liability. And so they've basically said, we're probably not going to take any of them down that you put up. So we're not saying stop it, but you really don't have our permission to do it. And it went on that way for quite a while, actually. Quite honestly, at one point there was the year might have been 2012, I'm not entirely sure. There was a statewide Rotary meeting, a district conference. We have these annually, and it was right here on Kauai. And I was asked to be a speaker and talk about rescue tubes. And so I thought this was an opportunity to sort of make this permission issue public without stirring anything up. So I asked then Mayor Bernard Cavalier to come up on the stage and be part of my presentation. And I asked Bob Westerman, Chief Westerman, the head of our fire department, and of course Lifeguards report to the fire department, to join me on stage.
Did they know it was coming?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
I had spoken to them specifically about, they had both been privately very supportive. The whole community at this point had been very supportive of what we were doing, what Dr. Downs was doing and Rotary was helping with. And we had several, probably at that point, 4 different Rotary clubs on Kauai involved with this. But what I wanted to do was just sort of go public with it and show that there was support. So I gave a presentation about what we were doing. And then we had a tradition that, well, I want to mention somebody else before I get too far. I had started with a partner, the Rescue Tube Foundation, in 2010, 2 years after Dr. Downs brought the concept to us. The Rescue Tube Foundation, we incorporated John Gilligan, Gillen rather was his name. He's sadly deceased. But John was past president of our club and very, very interested in water safety. He was also a mentor to me because he was a businessman and understood organizations and how to get people to come together and work for a common cause. I was just this, gun-ho, we've got to get some safety out there and we need these public flotation devices. So John and I worked very, very well together. And we moved forward to this, I'll go back now to the Rotary meeting, where both John and I spoke, presented, we had a PowerPoint presentation, and at the end of it, John had started in our Rotary Club this tradition of taking, most Rotary clubs use a bell that we ring at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting. And John had this idea that when we hear about a rescue that had been done with a rescue tube, and keep in mind, I keep diverging, but there's so many important things here. Every time someone's rescued using one of these rescue tubes, doesn't mean that person would have drowned. We have no way of knowing, right? Just no possible way of knowing. It means that they were given some assistance to get back to shore.
And typically not by a lifeguard. This is by a member of the community, right, family, or otherwise.
Correct. Yeah, the public rescue tubes that we have out are certainly used by lifeguards occasionally off duty. But lifeguards have their own equipment. When they're on duty, they're not using the ones we put out. They're absolutely there for family members, for Good Samaritans, for friends of the family. So the bell ringing, though, we would take a rescue tube and it has a strap on it, and we'd take a little metal gold star, and every time we'd hear about a rescue at our Rotary Club meeting, we would stand up at the podium, We would say that this person had been rescued. We just heard about it. We'd talk a little bit about whatever we knew about that rescue. And then we'd commemorate it. We'd put this gold star on the strap and we'd ring the bell. So at this meeting, I announced 2 rescues that had happened in the last couple of weeks. And I asked the mayor to ring the bell, and then I asked the fire chief to ring the bell. And it was a very solemn experience. It always is when we do this.
It also sounds very strategic.
The concept was strategic, of course. But I wasn't comfortable that thus far we hadn't been able to directly face the fact that these rescue tubes were not really permitted. There is a structure in the state to permit them. And we never really tried very hard because we've been told from the beginning that the lawyers are going to push back. You know, what if someone takes the rescue tube out and they drowned?
Yeah.
It's never happened. I should add in right now, we know of hundreds. I used to put a number to it. I think our website maybe says 400 plus. I have no idea how many times our rescue tubes have actually been used because it's hard to find. You hear anecdotally, but there's no reporting process. So we know of hundreds and hundreds of rescues. Sitting here right now talking with you, I can say at this moment, I have never once heard of a rescuer that was injured using one of our rescue tubes.
It's incredible.
Knock on wood,
big time.
this afternoon, that could change.
Nope.
But the liability issue was real, and lawyers had voiced this within county council, within state government. And so we all just kind of turned our head the other way and kept installing rescue tubes. This Rotary meeting, and I keep coming back to, was just a way of saying quietly but directly that the county government knows about this and they're clearly okay about it. I didn't say this, it was just the presentation. And hopefully it would set some precedent that eventually could lead towards getting permission. And in 2018, I led an effort in the state, along with some very instrumental members of the Lions Club on Oahu, to have the state of Hawaii's Good Samaritan law amended to include specific reference to, specific naming of a public rescue tube as an indemnified safety device. So that if you used a rescue tube and, heaven forbid, you or the person you were trying to help didn't make it or were severely injured in some manner, it was no different than you would try to use CPR or an EAD, an external, automatic defibrillator. The concept grew in momentum over time, and we added to the concept that if you allowed for a rescue tube to be installed on your property, because some people are fortunate enough to own beachfront property. They don't own the beach. In Hawaii and most states in the United States, anyone can go on any beach. But the land directly Mauka of that beach can be privately owned or a resort. Otherwise, it's county property typically, sometimes state. And if you allow a rescue tube to be installed on your property, which would be right at the top of the beach, what's referred to as the vegetation line is a good place because they don't get washed away in big storms. I wanted to make sure that those landowners were also indemnified. And so that was specifically included. And so in 2018, in one session of Congress, the legislature, we managed to get this passed. Huge story we don't have time to go into.
No, but huge accomplishment.
And then Governor Ige signed it. And now they were officially indemnified. They weren't necessarily permitted. There's a difference.
Yeah, two different things, right?
But we have been able to relieve the core of the legal issue for
which was
liability.
That indemnification. But you still, in 2018, it was not permissible. That had never been formally approved. Is that what I understand?
In 2018, the island of Kauai had been, We had previously gone to the Department of Land and Natural Resources and petitioned them. I went over to Oahu and testified in front of the board there. And they permitted rescue tubes on state property. The state literally owns and operates the beaches up to the average high water mark, wherever that is. Nobody, God, I presume, knows, but nobody else has a clue. We decided it's in the vegetation line. That just kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And so our rescue tubes were very likely on state property. So for the island of Kauai alone, they agreed to let us install them. A year or so later, the Kauai County Council also agreed that on county parks, that same position, because the park land would come down and end at the average vegetation line and then the beach. So they agreed. But if you look at the other islands, and I haven't talked about yet how we disseminated this around Hawaii, but the Big Island, which was the next place that rescue tubes actually expanded to, thanks to John Gillen, my partner. The Big Island talked to DLNR and got some pushback from them. And so
Department
then
of Land and Natural Resources.
Right, the State Department that operates the beaches. And so then they went to the county parks, because on the Big Island there are on all islands. In fact, there are quite a few county beach parks. And they got the county parks department to agree. So they got specific permission to install rescue tubes at county beach parks on the Big Island. And then in 2015, I spent some time on the island of Maui, and basically we were able to do the same thing, get the county beach parks to agree to installation.
My suspicion is once you've got one island, you can then replicate it, but it's the first one's the hardest one to crack the nut, right?
Yeah.
Was it surprising to you how difficult it was to get this Good Samaritan tool, this thing that can help and was proving to save lives and make a difference, to get it approved on the different levels with jurisdictions and municipalities?
On one hand, I was very surprised, because this whole concept of a personal flotation device, a publicly available flotation device, to me is just a no-brainer. I mean, come on.
Right.
People are dying in the ocean. Here's a very inexpensive way to prevent a certain number of those deaths. Let's just do it. On the other hand, I understand liability. I understand lawsuits. This country is a very litigious country. And so for the lawyers and just the public servants that work in our government, for them to be leery of the liability that they're taking on by saying, yeah, let's do this. I get that. A private landowner doesn't want to lose their house because some total stranger grabbed a rescue tube off the front of their land and went out and something bad happened. Yeah. Now, again, knock on wood, nothing bad has ever happened.
Yeah. While you were scaling and growing and going through this process, was there any other pushback? How did the Lifeguards service, were they always supportive, engaged, or were they leery themselves?
Lifeguards, you'd have to go to the individual lifeguards. There were many lifeguards that immediately understood the value of this and were very supportive. There were other lifeguards that felt quite the opposite, and they would express the concept that they felt, and I will underscore, this was not the general feeling of lifeguards, but there were some lifeguards that felt we were literally encouraging people to put themselves in harm's way because they were untrained to perform a open water rescue. And they are. If you're, a father and your child is out in the water and you can't swim very well and there's nothing else going on but your child's in trouble, what are you going to do?
It goes back to the double drowning concern, right?
You're going to go in the water, and likely you're both going to die, or at least possibly. I shouldn't say likely, but it's certainly a possibility. So the lifeguards had a point that by putting up these rescue tubes, that we were providing inspiration, I'll put it that way perhaps, that, hey, you can take this thing and go in the water and you can hopefully, stay safe and help somebody. And it could have gone awry. It hasn't yet. maybe never will. I don't know. We've been astoundingly successful in the fact that the people who have used these rescue tubes have come through it, in perfect shape. The lifeguards slowly started to change their attitudes. First, certainly here on Kauai, and Kalani Rivera, who is our head lifeguard, became a proponent. I'll say, years ago, a cautious proponent. He's very close to Dr. Downs and understood what he was doing. But he realized that they can't guard all the beaches. So initially, rescue tubes are best used on the remote beaches that we have no lifeguards on. And if you go to our website, rescuetubefoundation.org, one of the first things you're going to see is our advice is always swim near a lifeguard. There are plenty, even on Kauai, there are plenty of beaches, beautiful beaches with lifeguards. That's where you should be swimming.
100%.
But there are 30 plus other beaches on Kauai
Plus.
that don't have lifeguards. And there are fishermen that are out there fishing, and then a rogue wave will come up and grab them. So we're putting rescue tubes not just on sandy beaches, but on rocks.
Do you have any idea what, of all the rescues that have been made with rescue tubes, and I know they're not all tracked, but any idea what percentage is tourist versus local?
No, is the answer.
It doesn't matter. It's just curious. Right?
I know the statistics for drownings, which is that in the state of Hawaii, and it's fairly uniform island to island. This is studied by our Department of Health. Approximately 25% of the drownings are in fact locals. 75% are visitors.
Yeah.
But 25% are locals.
That's a whole nother conversation. I've had Kalani Vieira in here, lifeguard chief, we were just talking about, and he's talked about his passion for the junior guard program because it changes the future, because not only are those kids learning water safety, but they're also the ones using rescue tubes often because they're the ones in the water all the time and their families. Like it's such a long-term benefit to the community. The more people that are exposed and capable, the safer our waters are. Right. And Kalani, I've told the story a number of times. I have a fair number of Hawaii Lifeguard Association shirts and stuff that they've given me. Mm-hmm. I'm like, Kalani, I can't wear HLA, a Hawaii Lifeguard Association. Mm-hmm. I'm not a lifeguard. He goes, hey, have you ever made a rescue? Yes. Would you make one today? Sure. He's like, wear the shirt. And so I'm like, okay, I'll wear the shirt. But I will tell you, for those of us that are out in the water all the time, paddling, et cetera, rescues are being made by surfers, paddlers, kayakers, et cetera, all the time. All the time. And where we spend our time here on Kauai, I walk past one of these every time when I go to the water. It's on a tree, just like you said. It looks just like that. I feel so good at knowing that it's there. I hope I never need it, but knowing that it's there, I know there's one on the other side as well for anybody that would need it any time. It's wonderful. And I've told you personally, like, I didn't know the backstory. That's why I wanted you here. I didn't know how this came to pass. I didn't know what the Rescue Tube Foundation was or did or what the genesis story was. But now that I've learned about it over the years and I see the benefits and hear the accolades that you've been given and the foundation have earned from the success, it's staggering. We'll talk about some of that because you're getting more and more recognition and more support because more and more of these are needed. The more of these, the question is, if there's more rescue tubes, are there more rescues?
I'm going to say yes, because they're going on beaches that didn't have rescue tubes before. I mean, in an ideal world, every roughly 150 feet, there'd be a rescue tube on every beach.
Well, we'll talk about
Period.
We'll talk about that magic wand and what it would take to do that, because I think it seems like one of those few things in the world that now that everybody from the lifeguards and county government and state government all get it, everybody's in. Now it's like, how do we get more of them? Because I think everybody's come to the conclusion based on the statistics and what you've experienced. Like, we all want those very close to wherever we're going to be in the water all the time, right? For all to your knowledge, nobody has ever died using one of those to make a rescue.
Absolutely.
Hallelujah. I mean, it's an incredible statistic. Can I go back a little bit? So you've talked about the progression and the approvals you've gotten, the legislation that has happened. where did the foundation come from? Because this started as a Rotary Club of Honolulu initiative with these two players that were bringing it to you guys, going, hey, there's this thing that we can do. Now you have a foundation, and you created a foundation with John at one point. When did that pivot or evolution happen, and why?
The nexus was, as little a state as we are, the state of Hawaii, we're spread out across 6 major islands, if you will. And we wanted to share this concept with everyone. So John first, quite honestly, would take a rescue tube, hop on an airplane, and go off to the Big Island, was his first place that he went. Talk to Rotary clubs, get a little enthusiasm going. We would order and get some rescue tubes in for them. Rescue tubes cost money, so the Rotary Club would have to raise some funds. John and I had decided that printing the instructions that you can see on the rescue tube here, which, by the way, the very first instruction says, if you can't swim, do not use this device. Do not go into the water. And the second instruction says, call 911. So we want a rescue. We want to protect you, the rescuer, but we don't want to do it in isolation. And there are first responders out there. There are whether it's lifeguards, a quarter mile up the beach, or an ambulance coming, or fire department coming. We want to make sure that is put into motion. Then, not till you get to the third of these 5 boxes does it talk about how to use the rescue tube, how to put the strap on your shoulder and swim it out. So we came up with the idea of having these very simple graphic instructions. You don't have to read English, and a lot of our visitors do not read English. You just look at the pictures and you can understand what it's all about.
Brilliant.
2008, that's when Dr. Downs came to our club. Over the next 2 years, John and I, along with many other Rotarians, worked on Kauai. John started visiting some other islands. I started doing the same with him, other Rotary clubs. And by 2010, the end of 2010, we looked at each other and said, this has gotten fairly big, and we need to do some fundraising. We need to be able to stand perhaps outside of Rotary because of its size. And so we thought, well, maybe starting our own nonprofit of 501c3 would be the way to go about that. And we put that plan together, and literally like the last couple of days, I think it's December 28th, 2010, we officially were incorporated as the Rescue Tube Foundation, 501c3 nonprofit in the state of Hawaii, but the nonprofit status is given by the IRS. And we knew that going forward, we wanted this program to go to the mainland. We had zero bandwidth to try to accomplish that, but that was always a goal. And having a nonprofit that was outside of Rotary, but worked directly with Rotary and the Lions Club and other nonprofits,
gave you more reach.
Much better reach. And so that's the genesis of how we incorporated in 2010. John passed away just 5-6 years ago, so he was very instrumental for years and years in helping grow this organization.
Branch, there was a lot of people that were exposed to this early on through Rotary, Lions clubs, as you guys pitched it. It seems like it really, here you are, the director of the foundation, you're 15 years in with, or plus, coming up on 20 years, 15, 20 with Rescue Tube. Why? Why has it been such a, you tell me what it is. Is it a passion play? Is it, you see the need? Why has this been such a big driver for you?
For me, it's that, I think, very unique opportunity that came my way to do something that matters, that really makes a difference. I haven't personally saved anyone's life, but I know that what I've done has saved multiple lives. I have no idea how many. Only God knows how many drownings have been prevented. I'm constantly asked, well, how many lives have you saved? And it's like, I have no idea how many lives this program has saved, but many. Dr. Downs estimated on Kauai alone, it's 35 or 40 lives perhaps. But again, we have no idea. We have no idea how many times our tubes have been used, because I'd say probably, again, I'm guessing 60 to 80% of the uses we never hear about. Other than my marriage, I've never been so satisfied by anything I've ever done. It's just been remarkable. I think that's the driving force, to wake up in the morning sometimes and realize that someone out there is still alive because of something that I had to do with.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. It's an incredible thing that you've done. I know it's taken a community to do it, but you've been a driving force behind it. And the legacy of something like this. Like, I always think of there's the spark, and then there's the people that go make it happen. But how many rescue tubes are in the market, on beaches today?
Kauai has about 220. The Big Island, maybe 60 to 80 at this point in time. Maui, 180 to 200. And Oahu is the last island to join. There's about 30 right now, and mainly the Lions Club on Oahu. I've worked with them, I've put them in. But there were 6 installed on Molokai and another 6 installed on Lanai. So there are rescue tubes on all 6 major Hawaiian islands.
Incredible.
So
truly incredible. So I think I saw, and you can correct me, like over 600 worldwide at this point.
Installed. Yeah, I think it's probably closer to 800 at this point. We now have them on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, the Florida Panhandle, the Bay Area. There's even some rescue tubes up in what they refer to as the Sunshine Coast outside of Vancouver, up in Canada.
Amazing. How are these areas, how is North Carolina and the Sunshine Coast of British Columbia finding out about Rescue Tube?
It's very organic. I would love nothing better than to have an organization where I could reach out to shoreline communities and pitch the concept and explain to them what we're doing and how it would benefit them. Through Rotary, first and foremost, because Rotary just has a way of distributing information that's very organic. It's our coconut wireless through Rotary. We, on the other hand, when you think about Kauai, we have visitors, right? Lots and lots of visitors. Some of those visitors are Rotarians, and as a Rotarian, you're always encouraged, well, go to a Rotary club when you're off someplace else and introduce yourself and enjoy them and enjoy the club meeting. So we've had visitors come. I think North Carolina got started that way, where a visitor came, heard about rescue tubes at our Rotary meeting, and then stayed in touch with me. And later on, we started putting some rescue tubes up in North Carolina. Now there are 6 or 7 communities, particularly in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Fairly early on in 2012, the Rotary magazine called The Rotarian wrote an article about what we are doing. And I quite honestly kind of thought there'd be an onslaught of interest that would come from that. There wasn't, but there was some, so that I was able to speak to several communities. There's a large lake in South Dakota that put in rescue tubes, the lake shore. And they belong on water recreation areas, not just oceanfront, but lakes in particular are prime places for rescue tubes. It doesn't take a rip current for someone to get into trouble out in the water. It takes just swallowing a little water at the wrong time. Snorkelers, sadly, get into trouble all the time. That's a whole nother
conversation. Yeah, I've seen that firsthand.
So, but the concept of just providing a publicly accessible flotation device is so rudimentary. It's so basic. It has not spread, I think, because of concerns about liability. That's really been the core. And so we were successful to help work against that here in Hawaii with getting rescue tubes brought into the Good Samaritan law. I'm now talking to some people in the state of Florida about doing the same thing. And I hope North Carolina, it takes local advocates. It takes rescue tube evangelists, I like to refer to the individuals that really understand this concept and start working and lobbying locally. I can't do it from here.
No,
obviously.
no. And I also wonder, you talked about it, the complexity of getting approval at the municipal level, because there's a level of COIA, cover your ass these days, that at every level of government, unfortunately, or for whatever reasons. But I wonder if there's a playbook where you guys can take your experiences and help. I think of what Kalani has done and their group have done with like the personal watercraft rescue manual. They've got it down to they've got this thing super dialed in to help people jump over 10 years of experience and go, here you go, here's the playbook. Maybe there's a way to help do that, because there's only one of you, and because it seems to me sitting here going, where doesn't this apply? Like, where in the world does this not apply? Because unfortunately, there are a lot of places in the world that are prone to drowning. Drowning is an immense problem worldwide on an annual basis. Like, the numbers are stunning and staggering, and they make me ill. So where doesn't this make a ton of sense? So it seems like such a global opportunity there, but it's also grown at as you said, such a grassroots level. Rotarians have been like, oh, that's cool, let's take it back to South Carolina. It seems like, to you said, it's such a rudimentary concept. You would think that and it's not expensive. So it seems like the opportunity to make a difference around the world is here. It's just a matter of getting it out there and maybe getting some of that public policy to support it a little bit better, more quickly, right?
Correct.
It's truly amazing. And again, just because I'm looking at it, just everything you guys have done, you've made it very simple, very accessible. The instructions are very clear that anybody, again, like I said, I walk past it every day when I'm here and I'm like, I'm glad it's there and I understand it. It's very, it makes a lot of sense. And I think if I read correctly, that can support 3 people floating.
Yeah, we've tested it. I've also spoken to the Red Cross years ago and sort of got their statistics on, how many newtons of flotation, how many pounds of flotation are required for an individual. And 3 adult, the human body will almost just basically float by itself. It doesn't, if you weigh 150 pounds, you don't need to have 150 pounds of flotation.
Sure.
You need about 10 pounds of flotation to make the difference. And they're designed for 2 people, but we've tested and we openly say that 3 adults can be, and it certainly has happened on several occasions.
Yeah. What is, just because we're talking about it, what is the cost? If somebody goes, hey, I want to install rescue tubes in my community, what's it take? If the city of Newport Beach, where I live, says, hey, we want to start doing this, what's it take operationally, and then what's it take financially, if you're willing to share that?
No secrets there. The rescue tubes themselves, we provide because of the instructions we put on them. We think that's very, very important. We haven't mentioned this before, but I'll quickly throw in the reason those instructions are so very important is as that person is, any person is walking up the beach and they see this yellow stick out there and they don't know what it is, and they go up and they look at it and they look at the instructions and they understand it. They get in the back of their head that, oh, wow, it could be dangerous out there. I'm on vacation. I just thought we were going to just go out and play in the surf, and maybe I should watch my kids a little more closely. Or, if somebody took the time and effort to put this up, they're not saying don't go in the water, it's really dangerous. They're saying there could be a problem that you could get into out there. And if particularly you're not anywhere near a lifeguard stand, it's a very important subliminal message I think they get from this. So as communities approach us, it's very important, I think, that they get rescue tubes that have this signage on them. It's been very well proven to get the message across. Actually, in North Carolina, I was surprised. They asked, could I do a Spanish version? Mm-hmm. because they have so many Spaniards in that area, or people speaking Spanish. And so I did. I created, I don't speak Spanish, but I went through the process and created a bilingual rescue tube. And in Florida and North Carolina, that's what we're using. The graphics are clear enough, but it's always good to have additional instructions with the words. So if Newport Beach wanted to put in rescue tubes, they would contact me. I would talk through what the program is all about, how, in my opinion, they can go about getting local permission. I do not recommend that anyone just start putting them up. I mean, we did that years ago here, but that's not the right way to approach this. We really have gotten very little pushback. Once someone, a local person, has gone back to their city government or whatever the government structure is, county park perhaps, and explained what they want to do, they've almost inevitably always gotten permission to do it. A rescue tube, at this point in time, I can provide one of our rescue tubes for $90. The stand in Hawaii, we just use these very inexpensive, I don't know if you can see it up there, but it's just a white PVC pipe that you pick up at Ace. Is a perfect place to get them.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And so very inexpensive. So we don't provide, we used to provide the mounting system. We don't do that anymore. On the mainland, they've taken to putting, well, North Carolina and Florida, but North Carolina started at putting 4x4-inch wooden posts. But North Carolina actually removes their beachfront signage and rescue tubes when the storm season starts.
Interesting.
Because the winter waves are so strong that there's no telling which beach is going to be in, well, be there at all, or in what condition it's going to be in.
Interesting.
And so we don't do that in Hawaii. Our storms, we certainly have lost rescue tubes to storms, but it's rare, erosion. So yeah, $90 a rescue tube.
That's the cheapest piece of mind imaginable. Like I'm thinking about in Newport, you know, we're blessed. I always say that, you know, here on the island, we have 9, 10, 11, 12 lifeguard towers. I think we have that in like half a mile in Newport Beach.
Exactly.
You know, when we have the density of people, et cetera. But after hours, and in the winter, when those aren't open, there isn't a rescue device around. And you had mentioned earlier, and I never thought of it, but like, I sure wish we had those on those towers.
Yeah.
So there's year-round because you have tons of surfers and like, but when everybody's gone, there's still lots of people going out swimming all the time, and there isn't a device. I might have to talk to maybe some of my friends are listening in the lifeguard services at home.
So it just takes a rescue tube enthusiast in each community to get it started. You can be that.
You never know. Listen, foundations, I talk to a lot of nonprofit leaders. There's the mission, there's the vision, there's the support, and then there's fundraising. Yeah. How's the fundraising? You're a Spark guy. You saw this opportunity, this need, and you've now done it coming up on 20 years. How's that other side of nonprofit operations and leadership? How's that been for you?
Very difficult. It is not part of my tool set. I'm not a fundraiser. I've never been comfortable going and asking someone for funds. I've done it out of necessity, but so over the years we've been blessed that certain individuals that have heard about us have contributed a little money. We've had 1 or 2 angel donors that have given us a little money. The foundation has just sort of eked along hand to mouth, and we've done okay, except that we've never been able to establish a stable, sustainable platform from which this can move forward. I'm not going to do this forever. And in how many ever years when I think it's time to retire, or if the proverbial bus took me out tomorrow, there is no one else right now who would step into this position. There are certainly several rescue tube evangelists, I can name them, that would probably keep the program going locally, because that's what they started and what they've done, but no one who would work on this on a national basis. So it's very important to me to start to get the fundraising activities going and try to work towards a sustainable, financially sustainable future. I am extraordinarily fortunate in that I have just this year received a grant from the state of Hawaii, a grant in aid, and that grant will allow us to install 500 new rescue tubes, actually 400 new sites in the state of Hawaii, and then 100 rescue tubes as backup. And that grant also provides some operational monies that will, amongst other things, allow me to not hire someone, but to seek outside fundraising services. So I'm hoping in the next 12 months that I'll be able to work with an organization that can coach me and work with me and even do some of the actual legwork in grant writing, and we can start to seek some sustainable funding. There are both corporate and nonprofit sources that I think would eventually, if approached properly, step up. To do this, we're not candidly talking about a couple of $100,000 and, that's wonderful and we can get by. We're talking about a couple of $1 million over 4 or 5 years to set up a national situation where the Rescue Tube Foundation can seek out. I want to be able to do 2 things that I can't do right now. First and foremost, we've become a sales operation. And I say that with a bit of disdain, and I apologize because that's your business. But I'm selling rescue tubes. That's patently wrong. I should be giving away rescue tubes. I should be able to go even to a place like Newport Beach with all the money that's around there and say, you guys need 85 rescue tubes. Our team has looked and surveyed, and we've talked to some of your locals. If you will work with us and install them and maintain them and get permission to put them there, we'll give you the 85 rescue tubes. That's a long ways off. That is what's happening in Hawaii now. Thanks to the state, we're going to install 400 new rescue tubes and have 100 backup. And with any luck, perhaps the same thing next year. 400 sounds like a lot, but when you look at the amount of coastline of a state like Hawaii, 400 is a drop, an important drop in the bucket, but we need many more than that. But this organization, as much as a no-brainer as its concept may be, needs to be able to proactively go out to oceanfront communities and say, this is what you need to do. This is what's been done in these other communities. You need to do it as well, and we'll help you get there. And if I tried to do that today, I would be totally just overwhelmed with demands that I couldn't possibly satisfy until I can build up a staff, have a small team.
The nonprofit dilemma.
Yep.
Right? But there are so many nonprofits doing good work out there, but yours is so visible and so clearly beneficial to the communities. It seems like, as you said, a no-brainer. So it's just a matter of finding those ambassadors, finding, those big organizations, whatever, public, private, whatever, to come in and go, we see this, let's go. I have to believe that it's coming because it's just such a no-brainer. It's such a benefit to everyone in a coastal community that I don't know. I'm hoping that someone is listening because I believe in this branch. Like I hope that we can find, there has to be someone. The other challenge with nonprofits is, as you said, if you got hit by the proverbial bus, we got to make sure this continues because of the good that's being done through the foundation. So thank you for what you're doing and congratulations on that grant. That's incredible. 400, it's just as you said, an important drop, but you're not doubling what you have in the islands, but it's a significant impact, which is really incredible. I think I've kind of got from you. I was going to ask you, like you had said earlier, like how this role that you've provided and what you've done has, what it's meant to you and doing good and contribution in the community and everything. Tell me a little bit about tell me about just Lifeguards. You spend all your time doing the same job very differently than you're supporting them. You're a bolt-on community benefit. What's your experience with lifeguards? What do you think about? Are they appreciated at the level that they should be? How would this island be without them? I'm looking high level. Just any thoughts?
Lifeguards are the most undervalued public servants, I think, in public service. I mean, maybe that's an overly general statement, but lifeguards save the lives of members of your family, my family, everyone's family on a daily basis. And they do that by putting their own life at risk. Every time a lifeguard goes in the ocean, they put their life at risk. And I'm not going to compare them to police and fire and who also put their lives in risk. But lifeguards, by and large, have never been respected at the same level as police and fire. And EMT, for that matter. Lifeguards are kind of background. You go to the beach. Think about this. You go to a public beach and there's a lifeguard tower. And you're aware it's there. You might even be there because the tower's there. Hopefully you are. You should always swim in sight of a lifeguard tower if possible. But what are you going to do? You're going to go and put your blanket down and get out, your fins or whatever, and go out in the water and swim and enjoy with your family. Are you going to go to that lifeguard tower and talk to those guys? Oh, heavens no. People are afraid, I think. My experience in talking to people, they're afraid to go up there. They think they're not wanted. Those guys are busy. They're doing their job. Wrong. The lifeguard wants you. The first thing you should do when you get to the beach is go to the lifeguard tower and ask that lifeguard person to do two things. One, keep an eye on you and your family. They're going to do it anyway, but ask them to do that. And secondly, ask them, what are the conditions? Where is it safest to swim out here? And they'll tell you, and they want to. There's signs up and other ways for you to get that information. But the lifeguard is there to share that information and to be aware of you. People don't do that. They just see them as, I don't know what they see. They're just kind of background. So it's very sad. My experience as a lifeguard was very different because I was a lifeguard at a camp. And so campers knew that I was there and the other lifeguards were there. It was very, very specific. I've never been a lifeguard just in an open public beach. And so these guys and gals literally are risking their lives. They're not paid particularly well. They're always traditionally around the whole country. They're part of the fire department, which is fine and well and good, but they're sort of a stepchild to fire departments, as I have always understood it. And if a fire department needs a, $350,000 or whatever they cost fire truck, that's going to happen. The local community gets excited about a new fire truck. But if the lifeguards need another lifeguard tower, well, maybe someday when we've got some money. It just doesn't happen. The city, the county of Oahu has been the first in Hawaii and one of the very first in the whole country to change that. And their lifeguards are now directly reporting back to the mayor's office. They are the Department of Water Safety. And I think that should be the case for all lifeguards in the country. They should be respected, paid, and put in a place where they have access to their local governance to be able to explain what is needed to protect citizens and visitors to those beaches.
I couldn't have said it fractionally as well as you do. That I agree 1,000,000% on all fronts. I'll give them a double hallelujah for the work they do and how they serve everywhere. And that's in Hawaii and elsewhere. I'm super grateful to be able to rub shoulders with them. And they're just the most impressive, humble, amazing people as you said, putting their lives in harm's way every day. So hallelujah. And thank you again. Thank you for supporting them by giving them another tool in their tool belt. Because I'm sure that, again, when you have 11 towers or 12 towers on Kauai, you have miles between them in some cases and a lot of beautiful ocean in those same stretches. Like, again, that yellow rescue tube is a hell of a resource to them. Branch, you talked about, if you could get the funding to make this platform and be able to provide rescue tubes to the communities, like that's the dream. What's it going to take to make that happen? Like, is that foreseeable? It sounds like you've got momentum with this grant on Oahu, et cetera. What would it take?
If I really knew the answer to that, it would have already happened.
Yeah,
Is my, and I don't mean to be.
Nope, that's fair.
But what's it going to take?
Or maybe the question is, what do you need to make it happen?
I need the advice and support of an individual or a national organization that knows how to present a concept such as we have to a funding organization. There are many funding organizations. When I talk in terms of, and I'm just, not quite pulling numbers out of the air. I've done some budgeting and I've thought it through, but $1 million a year is a very small number for a lot of larger organizations that are involved in supporting nonprofits. To me, it sounds like an impossible number. It is just huge. But for something along that round number of $1 million a year, you could have a small staff. You could have the ability to, on a proactive basis, reach out to communities that need your services. I've been hesitant to beginning to approach any organization that might be able to fund at that level, because perhaps up until this year, until the state stepped up, and by the way, Nadine Nakamura, our speaker of our house here in the state of Hawaii, she is the reason that this funding, it wasn't her decision, but she's the one who personally encouraged me to apply for it. And she's the one who recognized my work and the foundation's work with an incredible award and ceremony in front of the combined legislature back in February.
Congratulations, by the way. That's
Thank
amazing.
you. It was an amazing honor.
Well earned.
An amazing honor. But Nadine has been very, very instrumental in getting us to where we are at this point. And when I wrote the grant application, I specifically included monies to allow me to hire some outside consultants to help us with fundraising, because it is clearly not my area of expertise. You can get fundraising, you can cloud fundraise, and I can get 10,000 people to all send me $10 or $100 or whatever. And if you can sustain it, that's good, but that ebbs and flows. I think we're primed. We may not be quite ready, but we're primed now to be able to accept and utilize a larger donation that would establish a sustainable budget for this organization. I am very primed to start educating some other administrators that can step into this organization. It's been much too much a one-man operation. Having said that, I have wonderful people who are very active on the different islands and in North Carolina and Florida, and without them, this wouldn't have expanded. So it's not a one-man operation, but it's one person organizing and being able to schedule and arrange all of that. And it needs to be a small team. My plan would be over the next year with this grant to start to get some professional advice and move forward in that direction.
So I'd asked you like the magic wand question, Branch, about what it would take to get to the next level. And we talked about funding and connection and community and all that. And as I said, I think that's coming. Like this seems like the momentum between your recognition, the awareness of the state, it expanding to other states. If I had a magic wand, like I really believe in this, and I think that I say we. My hope is that we can reach the right people because again, I don't want to sound dumb, but it's the same. You've said it. It's a no-brainer from a water safety perspective, and I think of all the places that most of us love to visit. There is going to be, you're either going to mountains or you're going to water, right? Like those are, or you're going to beautiful urban, you're going to cities, but most places that I know people are going, it's an island somewhere, a lake somewhere, and I think that these should be everywhere. I think of Lake Tahoe and the many, many lakes in the Midwest and everywhere else. So I'm an optimist, and I certainly think that people, as you have experienced, people will see the benefit, or people that are familiar with the benefit, like you said with the Rotarians, they come in, they see it, and they take it back to their community. I'm going to try to do that as well. Branch, I hope you hear, I just want to say thank you. I greatly appreciate you coming and telling the whole story, but more so, I really appreciate what you and the community have done to build this. And I just think it's such a beautifully important tool to help communities stay safer. And again, the darker side, I don't want to say it darker, but I'm fearful with kids. I'm always nervous in Hawaii. And as much as I'm a water guy and I feel safe with my kids when I'm there, things happen quickly, and I see people all the time making decisions in the water in Hawaii that make me very uncomfortable and nervous. So knowing that we have some of the best water people, lifeguards in the world on call all the time makes me feel pretty confident. But having that at the ready gives me just another level of understanding of what people can do, what Good Samaritans, what people on the beach can do, as you said, off-duty lifeguards. So thank you to you and the Rotarians and everybody that's been involved in this concept and really pushing it out and proving it out. It's really important. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Mark.
And I think for everybody, we want to see yellow tubes up and down coasts of rivers and lakes and beaches everywhere, because it just makes life a lot safer and a lot more fun when you have that level of confidence. And I do want to say, I think you said it perfectly when we were talking about lifeguards. Lifeguards want to talk to people on the beach. They want to be engaged. They don't want to sit up there and it's so not what the TV shows often make them out to be. They're wonderfully cool. They want to inform people. They want to engage. They are some of the most humble, I always say, humble badasses. Men and women of all ages, and I've been fortunate to have a number of people here, and they always talk about new lifeguards, always seeing, 16-year-old kids just went through training, they've become a guard, they're in their first hour, and they're doing CPR or making major rescues at 16 years old. Like, what kind of life skill did I have at 16? I mean, it's really incredible. So just on all levels, so supporting our lifeguards in any way we can and providing this to support the community the way that you have is it's brilliant. So thank you for you.
Welcome. I do this because of the joy that I receive from it. And when I look, you had asked earlier about partners, and that's becoming more and more important as we grow and expand. Lifeguards, I think, are an incredibly central issue that I'm aware. What am I really trying to say? When the state said, okay, we're going to give you some money and we want you to place, in this case, 400 more rescue tubes out on the beaches, the immediate question that comes to mind, besides, thank you very much, but where am I going to put them? Who decides where 400 rescue tubes can be placed on all of the beaches or the priority beaches around the entire state, all 6 islands? I certainly can't do that. Rotary doesn't have that kind of expertise. There is an organization that has that expertise, and it's the organization of lifeguards, and they happen to work back through the Hawaii Lifeguard Association. And so in speaking with them, and we're very fortunate that Kalani is the president currently of the Hawaii Lifeguard Association, Kalani and I spoke, and he said, I asked, would the lifeguards be willing to make that recommendation to me, and then through me, I will make it back to DLNR that will oversee this grant? And Kalani immediately said yes. And we're working now through the Hawaii Lifeguard Association, the various chiefs on the different islands, and through the lifeguards that they'll assign to that task. And in the next month to 6 weeks, holidays aside, but anyway, they're going to go out and they're going to do surveys of all of the beaches in the state of Hawaii.
Wow.
And I think what we're going to find, I know what we're going to find, is that we don't need 400 more rescue tubes in Hawaii. We need 1,200 more. We need, who knows what the number will be. I've explained my concept of how many rescue tubes. We haven't discussed that. I don't know what time we have, but when you take a beach like Hanalei Bay, it's a good example. It's 1.25 miles roughly from tip to tip. There are 22 rescue tubes on Hanalei Bay. Why are there 22 rescue tubes? It's because that was the money we had at the time that the Rotary Club decided to augment the 5 or 6 that Dr. Downs and KLA had already put there. So I went to Dr. Downs and I said, so where do we put these? And we thought it through and we did some simple math and we decided, well, approximately every 300 feet. If we did that, then we'd get to the end and we'd have them spaced. There'd be this yellow picket fence of rescue tubes along Hanalei Bay, which you can't see, by the way. The yellow color is very instrumental when you get close to it to find it, but it sort of blends into the background. So if you think of yourself standing on the beach and you just happen to be equally spaced between 2 rescue tubes, and someone right in front of you, family member, whomever, is in trouble, and you are going to go and help them. And you're there perhaps by yourself, or there's no other people around that you know to really help. So what do you have to do with this spacing of rescue tubes? You have to run 50 yards, half the length of a football field, just to get to the rescue tube. And you have to run the same distance back. So by the time you're back at the place that you're going to enter the water, you have run the length of a football field.
Might be a little tired.
Candidly, you have no business going in the water at that point. Yeah. You're going to go in anyway. Hopefully, when this event started, there's somebody else there and you could tell them, knowing that you were going to go in the water, you could say, go get that rescue tube. In fact, if there's 2 of them, you might ask somebody else to go get the other rescue tube and wait. But 300 feet apart is too much. You can't put them 10 feet apart. That's too many. So, what's the magic number? I don't have the magic number. I'd say half of what we're doing now. They should be about 150 feet apart.
Branch, what's so interesting about this that it didn't occur to me? It never occurred to me that you guys were deciding where these went. I just always assumed that was the lifeguard service or somebody, air quotes here, was telling you where they go. You were just providing them. It didn't ever occur to me that you were the ones making those decisions. Yeah, that's a big surprise to me.
That hopefully is the history of this and not the future.
Yeah. Well, again, going back to what you said, you got the approvals for 400. You believe it's probably more like 1,200. It's an easy way to go back to the well for the next 3 years and go, okay, we got 400 up, we need 800 more. Oh, we got 800 up, we need 400 more, whatever it may be.
So then the question is, why are there only the 220 on the island of Kauai, for instance, when we know it's not nearly enough? Well, one of the answers is they cost money to put in, so you've got to raise funds. But that's not really the limiting factor. Installing a rescue tube is 1/10 of what it takes to have that rescue tube there. Because if it's not maintained, then it becomes useless. And by maintenance, it's really simple, but it's hard to actually do it. You just need to go look at it once a month. Make sure it's still there. Maybe it's not. Make sure that if it's still there, somebody hasn't used it for knife practice. I mean, we literally have had people, I presume, high on meth or something that have sliced them up. Make sure that not so old that it's not in really good condition. Luckily, these things will last 3-4 years. We've had them out. They look like heck at that point, but they still float really well. The strap that's attached to them can, in 3 or 4 years, get a little brutal. We have replaced straps and reinforced straps. They need to be maintained. They need to be looked at on I think a monthly basis, on a regular basis. That's a very difficult thing to arrange.
And whose responsibility is that?
Whoever installs them, theoretically, should be responsible.
I mean, is it the foundation or is it the municipality? Like, when you turn it over to Oahu, is it an who on Oahu is going to be checking these and ensuring that they're in good condition? Is that you? Is that the lifeguard service? Is that the Rotarians? Who is it?
Since you asked Oahu, that's a special case situation. In talking with the head of the Department of Ocean Safety on Oahu, Kurt Lauger, and I've sat in his office, we've had this very discussion. He said, well, I think the lifeguards can do that on Oahu. We have, I think, 8 or 9 districts, and I have chiefs in all of them, and I have lifeguards. There's 44 towers. They're not on every single beach, but they're on many, if not most of the beaches. They're near the other beaches. So it's certainly not settled, but he suggested that was a possibility. If you look at Kauai, and I've talked to Kalani, who's our chief lifeguard here, it's quite clear that the lifeguards are only on, say, these 10 or 12 beaches. And there are another 30 plus beaches that they go to occasionally. They have a truck. They have jet skis. The truck, they will do roving lifeguarding, driving to beaches that have no towers and sit there for a while if they know people are there, or they take a jet ski and go and look at other beaches. I'm not sure that the lifeguards could be tasked to maintain and look at all of the rescue tubes. Look at the Big Island, which is so much bigger than any of the other islands. I think I can comfortably say the lifeguards couldn't possibly encompass all of that. Rotary, I'm talking to the current governor of the District 5000 of Rotary to see if we can get some Rotarians to step up to do that. The Lions have said they're interested. There's a new relationship that has not formed yet. It's only in discussion level, but I think I can be public about it. I've talked to the American Red Cross. Mm-hmm. I've talked to the director, Molly Schmidt, who is the director of the American Red Cross for the Pacific Rim. I'm not sure of its exact title, but they have a couple of thousand volunteers just in Hawaii alone. And so we're talking about the possibility that they might be able to assist in doing this. But the single largest task in what we're trying to do in placing rescue tubes is maintaining them.
I'm so glad you brought that up because it hadn't occurred to me. And now we're starting to see, here we are towards the end, and I'm like, oh, now I see the complexity. It's not just getting the approvals, getting them out, getting awareness of them. It's actually, once they're out, it's maintenance, it's upkeep, it's ensuring that they're there, it's replacing of parts or replacing of them in totality.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Huge task.
And in perpetuity.
In perpetuity, right? Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
So don't put up more than you can take care of.
Yeah.
And so I think even on Kauai, there's been a feeling of, well, we're at a pretty good place right now because we can more or less maintain the ones we've got. If all of a sudden we had 600 on this island, which is probably not an unreasonable number, what will we do about that?
Yeah, the maintenance work goes up.
And I don't have an answer to that yet. And the answer may be that we have to hire someone whose job it is to drive around in a truck, like painting a bridge. And when he gets to the end, he does it all over again. Wow. I don't know, but it's going to take funding. It can't probably just all be volunteer. I think this is something that at the end of the day, the county and the state maintain our roads, right? They put up guardrails and they put up mile markers and occasionally they come by and they clean the weeds away and they make sure you can read the signs. And we need that same kind of
recurring management.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. I understand. I think I understand more. Well, listen, Branch, I really appreciate you sharing the story of the genesis and the need and the impact and some of the challenges and the future of Rescue Tube and the Rescue Tube Foundation. As I've said 18 times, I'm super grateful for what you do. I think it's brilliant. And thank you for your service to the community, because the legacy of this, as I said earlier, is profound. And the number of lives that you and your team and the people that have been instrumental in this will have saved at the end of our days it's a real and staggering number. And so congratulations and thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for sharing the story. I appreciate you.